Sarah was 26 years old when she made the drive from El Paso to San Antonio alone for the first time. She had done it as a kid with her parents and remembered it being boring. Flat. Brown. Nothing to look at for 400 miles except oil pumps slowly nodding in the heat like they were half asleep. She left at 9 p.m. to avoid the desert sun. Smart, she thought. She would be in San Antonio by 3 a.m., sleep at her sister's place, and wake up to coffee and breakfast. She had a full tank of gas, a phone at 87%, and a playlist she had been building for weeks. Everything was fine, until mile marker 212, when her car started pulling hard to the right. She gripped the wheel, felt the shimmy in the steering column, and realized with a sinking feeling she later described as a trapdoor opening under her stomach that she had a blowout. She pulled off onto the shoulder, got out, and confirmed it. Rear driver's side tire, completely flat. She had a spare. She had watched a YouTube video on changing a tire exactly once, 6 months earlier, but she figured she could manage. She popped the trunk. That's when she saw the first car slow down. It didn't stop. It just slowed to almost nothing, then kept going. She told herself it was nothing. Someone being nosy or just cautious. She went back to the tire. She got the jack out, found the lug wrench, and was actually making progress, kneeling on the asphalt in the dark and working through it step by step, when headlights appeared in her peripheral vision again. Same car. She was almost certain of it. It made a U-turn about a quarter mile down the road, and was now coming back toward her, slowly, along the shoulder. Her hands stopped moving. The car pulled up behind her and stopped. Engine running. Lights on. Nobody got out. She stood up and tried to look casual. She checked her phone. 1 bar of signal. She typed a message to her sister. On the side of I-10 near mile 212. Car pulled up behind me. If I don't text in 10-minute, call 911. She hit send and watched the spinner turn. The driver's door opened. A man got out. Medium build. Dark jacket. She couldn't make out his face because her hazard lights were behind her, putting her in silhouette while he stayed in the shadows. He said, and she remembered his exact words, "You need help with that?" Normal words. The kind any normal person might say. But something was wrong. She felt it the way you feel a drop in air pressure before a storm. She couldn't explain it. She just knew. She said, "No, I'm fine, my husband is on his way." He paused, looked at the car, looked at her. Then he said, "You sure? This stretch doesn't get a lot of traffic at night." She said, "I'm sure. Thank you though." Another pause. Longer this time. Then he got back in his car. But he didn't leave. He sat there with the engine running for 4 minutes. She counted. She stood beside her car and tracked every second, phone in hand, thumb resting over the emergency call button. At 4 minutes and 11 seconds, he drove away. She didn't finish changing the tire. She didn't trust her hands to stop shaking long enough to do it. She drove on the rim, grinding and sparking, for 2 miles until she reached a gas station with lights blazing, a man behind the counter, and a security camera above the door. She sat inside that station for a full hour before she felt steady enough to call a tow truck. The message to her sister had never sent. She reported the incident to the Texas Department of Public Safety the next day. They told her she had done the right thing by trusting her instincts. They also told her there had been 2 other incidents reported in that same corridor that month. Both women, both alone, both late at night. Neither of those women had made it to a gas station. Marcus was driving back from his uncle's funeral. He was 31 years old, exhausted, and he admitted later that he probably should have pulled over and slept somewhere along the way. But grief does something to your logic. He just wanted to be home. He wanted his own bed. He wanted to stop sitting in rooms full of people asking if he was okay. It was 1:30 in the morning on Highway 61, heading north through the Mississippi Delta. If you have never driven that road at night, it is one of the darkest stretches of highway in the entire continental United States. No streetlights, no ambient glow from nearby cities. Just flat black farmland stretching out on both sides, and the thin white corridor carved out by your headlights. He had been driving about 40 minutes when he noticed the truck. A white pickup, maybe 2 car lengths behind him. Nothing unusual at first, except it had been there for a long time. Long enough for Marcus to notice. Long enough for him to slow down twice, once to see if it would pass him, and once to see if it would drop back. It matched his speed both times. He tried to reason it away. Same direction. Probably heading to the same town. He told himself to calm down. Then he slowed to 40 miles per hour in a 65 zone. The truck slowed to 40. Marcus ran through his options quickly. Call 911, yes, but what exactly do you say? Someone is driving behind me? His phone was showing 2 bars, maybe enough signal to get through. He made a decision. Next exit, he would take it and see what happened. Exit 44 was a county road. No gas station. No lights. Just a road disappearing off into open fields on either side. He took it anyway. The truck took it too. Now Marcus was on a 2-lane road in absolute darkness with a vehicle following him, and he had just left the highway. He said later that the moment he realized his mistake felt like swallowing a mouthful of ice. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He did the one thing that ended up saving him. He floored it. He had no idea where that road went. He just drove 70, 80 miles per hour on a road barely wide enough for 2 cars passing each other, praying there wasn't a curve coming up that he wouldn't be able to see in time. The truck accelerated behind him and closed the gap. Then, and Marcus described this as the only lucky thing that happened that entire night, his headlights swept across a sign. Bolivar County Sheriff Substation, 0.4 miles. He aimed straight for it. He pulled into that parking lot doing 55 miles per hour, tires screaming against the pavement, and laid on his horn until the door opened and a deputy stepped outside, hand resting on his hip, confused and still half awake from the noise. The white truck had stopped at the entrance to the parking lot. It sat there for a long moment, then slowly reversed back into the darkness and was gone. The deputy took Marcus's full statement. He described the truck in as much detail as he could and gave a partial plate number. They put it out over the radio. The truck was found the next morning, abandoned 6 miles up that same county road. Inside, investigators found zip ties and a woman's earring that did not belong to the registered owner. The registered owner was never identified. The truck had been reported stolen 8 days earlier out of Memphis. The case is still open. This last story is different from the others, because in this one, the danger didn't follow the driver. The driver let it in. Donna was 53 years old, a nurse for 28 years. By every account from the people who knew her, she was one of the most genuinely generous and compassionate people you could ever come across. The kind of person who simply could not pass someone in need without stopping. That instinct had saved lives in the emergency room for nearly 3 decades. On a Friday night in November, on a dark stretch of I-75 in northern Michigan, it almost took hers. She was driving home after a weekend visiting her daughter in Gaylord, just over 2 hours from home. The temperature outside was 19 degrees and still dropping. That's when she saw him on the overpass. A young man, early 20s, standing on the shoulder. No car visible anywhere. No hazard lights. Just a person standing alone in the cold beside the highway median. Donna slowed down. She told herself she would just check if he was okay. She cracked her window as she pulled up alongside him. He said his car had gone off the road about a mile back. He said he had been walking for 40 minutes. He was visibly shaking. She could see that clearly. He was not dressed for the cold at all. Just a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. She unlocked the door. She said, "I'll take you to the next exit." He got in. For about 90 seconds, everything seemed fine. He was polite. He said thank you and asked how far the next town was. Then he said something that made the part of Donna's brain trained by nearly 3 decades of nursing, the part wired to recognize when something is clinically wrong, go completely silent and still. He said, "I knew you'd stop. I've been watching your lights for a while." She didn't react. She kept her eyes fixed on the road and her hands at 10 and 2. Then, in a calm voice that she has said she still cannot fully explain the source of, she said, "Oh yeah, how come?" He said, "You slowed down twice before you stopped. That means you wanted to stop but talked yourself out of it. Those are the ones that stop." Donna said the inside of her car felt like it shrank to the size of a coffin. She was doing 67 miles per hour. She couldn't stop. She couldn't get out. She couldn't reach her phone. She did the only thing she could think of. She turned on her hazard lights, pressed them on, glanced over at him and said, "Sorry, the warning light has been acting up, keeps going off on its own." Casual. Matter of fact. Her voice did not shake. He looked at the dashboard. In that moment she reached down slowly, the way you would if you were just adjusting the heat, and dialed 911 with her thumb. She had memorized the button layout on her phone years ago for situations in the ER. She pressed it face down against her thigh. Then she started talking louder and with more detail than the conversation called for, telling him exactly where they were, what mile marker they had just passed, what exit was coming up ahead. She was talking to the dispatcher. He had no idea. By the time she took the next exit, 2 Sheboygan County Sheriff's vehicles were already on their way. She pulled onto the exit ramp, and the moment she spotted the cruisers, she simply stopped the car right there in the middle of the ramp, put it in park, got out and walked toward them. He didn't run. He sat in the passenger seat while deputies surrounded the car. He was 22 years old. He had 2 prior convictions for assault. Investigators determined he had been using that exact same method, positioning himself as a stranded person in dangerously cold weather, at least 4 times over the past year on rural Michigan highways. The others who had stopped before Donna, they never reported it. They were either too frightened afterward or too uncertain about what exactly had taken place to make the call. Donna gave her statement that night, drove home, and called her daughter. Then she went in for her next shift in the emergency room.